If you feel like financial freedom is out of reach for you, especially if you haven't even bought your first property yet, then this video is for you. I'm going to walk you through how I bought my very first property and how it led me to financial freedom ultimately at the age of 31. So, the inconvenient truth is the American financial system isn't designed to help ordinary people that are working like you and me, unless you understand how the system truly works. Think of it like you're playing a game. If you don't know the rules of the game, you're not going to know how to win. In fact, you're most likely going to end up losing. But when you do know the rules, the tax code, how to invest, etc., it really sets you up for success. And so that's why in this video, we're going to really focus on what are the rules of the game, especially for real estate investing, because real estate investing is one of the best vehicles to building your wealth in today's financial system. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Rule number one is the rich buy assets that appreciate or gain value over time. Now, appreciation is just a fancy word that basically means, at least in real estate, that the price of the property increases over time. It's typically between 3 to 7% per year. So let me go ahead and walk you through the appreciation on the first rental that I bought. So my very first property I bought for $262,000 in Stockton, California. It was a 3-bed, 2-bathroom house, and I put a 20% down payment on it. So my down payment was $52,400. Now, I held my first property for 7 years before I sold it. And during those 7 years, the price of the property went from $262,000 to $437,500 when I sold the property. So that's a gain of about $175,000 during that 7-year period, which was about $25,000 per year. By just sitting on that property, it basically appreciated while I was sleeping, and I didn't have to do anything to actually increase the value of the property other than some minor renovations. So that's pretty cool, right? That's one of the ways that real estate really builds your wealth over time, and it's just like an automatic thing that happens. So my first property built my wealth by $25,000 per year just by holding onto it. Now, rule number two is the rich buy assets that produce income. While appreciation is great on paper, it's kind of like the stock market. You buy a Tesla stock at $200 and maybe it goes up to $500. If you don't sell the stock, nothing changes. You don't feel any different, right? So on paper, you're worth $300 more in that case, but in real life, nothing really changes. And that's because appreciation looks great on paper, but you don't actually realize that cash unless you sell the stock or the property. Or in real estate, you can also take out a HELOC or do a cash out refinance to access that cash. But what you really need is income on a monthly basis. And real estate also produces that. And that's where the true financial freedom comes from. Because that income that you make on a monthly basis basically can cover your bills, allow you to travel more, allow you to pursue your passions, and buy your time back, which is honestly the biggest reason why I got into real estate investing. So in real estate, there's this term called cash flow. So to calculate what we call your cash flow, which is basically your profit on a monthly basis, is you take your rental income, you subtract out your mortgage payment, and then you subtract out miscellaneous expenses. And ideally, that number is positive. Basically, that means your rental income is covering your mortgage payment and miscellaneous expenses, and then some profit on top of that. So for me, that number was $1,500 per month on my first property. And the reason why it was so high was because I rented out by the bedroom to college students. So I will typically take a house, a 3-bed, 2-bath house, and I'll convert it to a 5-bed or a 6-bedroom house where I can rent out each room for $600 to $700 a month. And let's say I have a 6-bedroom house, 6 bedrooms times $700 per bedroom is $4,200 per month in total rental income for the house. So that's why that's how I was able to make so much cash flow on my property. So that very first property was making about $1,500 a month in cash flow, as you can see up there, and that's about $18,000 per year. So maybe drop in the comments down below if you had $1,500 per month in passive income that's coming in while you're sleeping, what would you do with that income? For me, again, I like to travel a lot, so I travel to a lot of on a lot of international trips. But for you, maybe it's pursuing a hobby that you've always wanted to do. Or maybe you want to spend more money on your health and exercise more. So next, let's talk about rule number 3, and we'll get to this fancy graph on the whiteboard because I'm sure you're wondering, what does this graph even mean? So rule number 3 is the rich use other people's money to build their wealth. Now, I'm not talking about you're borrowing money from your friend to buy a bunch of real estate. I'm talking about when you buy a property, typically what happens is the bank gives you a loan. So you're borrowing money from the bank. I did a 20% down on my first property, and the other 80% of that cash was funded by the bank. And when you rent out your property, your tenants are actually, since they're paying their rent, they're going to be covering your mortgage. And when this happens, basically they're paying down the mortgage for you. So every single month, a little part of that mortgage payment goes towards what we call the principal value of the mortgage, which means every single month you own a little bit more and more of that property. So on this fancy graph you see here, the green line represents your appreciation. That's just the increase in value of your property over time. The red line represents your loan pay down. As you can see at the beginning, it's kind of slow, right? But when you get towards the end of your loan, you really see your loan gets paid down really quickly. That's because near the end of the loan, a larger portion of your monthly mortgage payment will go towards paying the principal rather than the interest. And so you can see how this really accelerates your growth over time, especially in the later years. So down here you can see the time, the x-axis is the time, and the y-axis is what we call your equity. So I shaded in green here your equity. Basically, equity is your appreciation, which is the green that's above this dotted blue line. That's called your appreciation. And then you add that to your loan pay down, which is the green that's below the blue line. So the appreciation plus the loan pay down is what adds up to your equity on your property. Basically, how much of that property do you own? And for me, on my very first property, my loan pay down was approximately $4,250 per year on average. So obviously the first couple years, the pay down was a lot less, but then it really accelerated after a couple years. So that averaged out to be about $4,250 per year that's being paid towards the principal on that loan. So those are the 3 big ways that real estate builds your wealth for you. Now, if you add up all the values on this graph, your appreciation plus your equity or your loan pay down plus your cash flow over here, you get your total amount per year that is going towards building your wealth. So your appreciation is $25,000 a year, plus the loan pay down of $4,250 per year, plus the cash flow of $18,000 per year, adds up to $47,250 per year. So if you divide this by my down payment was $52,400 per year. If we divide the $47,250 per year divided by my down payment of $52,400 per year, you get 90% ROI. So 90.2% ROI every single year on the cash that I actually invested in this property, which is pretty crazy, right? Now, it's not like every single year I'm getting 90% ROI in my pocket, but on average over the 7 years while I owned this property, it was on average about 90% per year based on the down payment that I put on it. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about the 4th and final rule, which is that the rich use the tax code to their advantage. Most people don't realize that the tax code is not designed for ordinary W-2 employees. It's actually designed to incentivize people to start businesses and invest. And real estate investors can really take advantage of a lot of the tax breaks that are in the tax code. And a lot of people might argue, What do you mean by the system isn't designed for ordinary people? Well, think about it this way. Ordinary income taxes are 20 to 35% if you add up the federal tax bracket plus the state tax bracket, which is a pretty significant amount of your money. Versus, let's say you invest your money into, let's just take stocks, for example. The capital gains tax, the long-term capital gains tax is 0% all the way up to the first $48,000 for 2025. So that means the first $48,000 I gain, I don't have to pay any capital gains taxes on per year, which is pretty crazy compared to the 20 to 35% taxes I have to pay on my ordinary income tax. Now, real estate has a tax break called depreciation. So depreciation is basically what the IRS considers wear and tear on your property over time. They assume that the value of your property is going down, which is not true actually. Properties in general go up in value over time. So you get this pretty much automatically on your property. Basically, to calculate depreciation, you take your purchase price of the property, subtract out your land value, and whatever is left is the building value. And then you take that building value and divide it by 27.5 years. And that's how much depreciation you can take per year. So let's say on my first house, for example, it was $262,000. If I subtract out $62,000 for the land value, that leaves me with $200,000 for the actual price of the property. Divide that by 27 and a half years, and you get about $7,000 per year that I get to take as depreciation, which means that I don't pay taxes on the very first $7,000 in profit that I make on that very first rental, which is pretty crazy because even though the property is not going down in value, I get to take that $7,000 tax break every single year. And ultimately, this lowered my taxable income and put a lot of money back in my pocket. And that's why I say, let the rules work for you. Understand the game, understand the rules, and let the rules work for you. And by investing in real estate, it's one of the best ways to legally reduce your tax burden. Now, if you're still feeling stuck financially, remember, I started with no connections, no special knowledge, and I basically bought that very first property without knowing what to do with it. But it let me get my foot in the door, and it built up my wealth over time. Like we talked about before, it was about $47,000 per year that I was making on that property, if you include the equity plus the cash flow. So this isn't about getting lucky or getting rich overnight, get rich quick. This is about buying an asset that's going to appreciate and build your wealth over time. And if you just are patient, if you're a patient investor, eventually you can become a millionaire in the course of 5 to 8 years or so by investing in real estate. And at the end of the road is financial freedom. And let me tell you, financial freedom is one of the best feelings in the world. Being financially free is one of the best feelings in the world because you get to basically do what you want, where you want, with whomever you want to do it with. You get to travel more, pursue your passions, and it was completely worth it for me. Even though I was investing on the side, working my full-time pharmacist shift, and I had to deal with the challenges of doing that, it was completely worth it at the end of the day. So if you enjoyed this video and got a lot of value out of it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends or those who are struggling with getting started in real estate investing so that I can help them out. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on next week's video.